About 4 days ago, I brought to you guys a leak from Ice Universe where we went over the dimensions of the Galaxy Z Fold 5 compared to the Galaxy Z Fold 4. In that video, we talked about the fact that the length, width, and thickness were all being diminished, shrunk, if you will, by about 0.2 millimeters, and that when closed, the device would be 2.4 millimeters thinner at its thickest point. And this is, of course, because the Z Fold 4, when it folds in, does not fold totally flat. It's actually slightly open at the hinge because of the style of hinge mechanism Samsung is currently using. Well, with the Z Fold 5, that's going to be changing. A new hinge mechanism allows it to fold totally flat and also diminishes the appearance of the crease. Like I said, we talked about this just a couple of days ago, and I was doing this kind of in an attempt, one, to just illuminate what this device would be like, but to also sort of counter the idea that the Z Fold 5 would be a device worth totally ignoring. A lot of people look at some of the rumors about it and they say, wow, nothing much is changing. It's a new hinge and it's a new processor, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which I do think is a much bigger deal than some people may realize. Just look at the S22 Ultra compared to the 23 Ultra. Very small changes, but that system on a chip, that processor, made a really big difference. Okay, so I'm trying to kind of put that out there that I do think the Z Fold 5 is going to be a fairly substantial upgrade. Well, today I'm going to make that task a little bit harder on myself because we're looking at the first renders of what the Z Fold 5 is reported to look like. Now, these renders come from the website MySmartPre, which is actually sourcing these renders from OnLeaks, who is one of the more reputable, more reliable leakers in the tech world. And these renders do portray a device that looks nearly indistinguishable from the Z Fold 4. If you are hoping for a device with a radically different form factor with a change to the screen real estate, that is simply not going to happen. If you're looking for a device whose camera bump looks a bit different, that is apparently also not going to be happening. Let's look at some of these renders here first because they are quite nice. This is a 360 view of the Galaxy Z Fold 5. And like I said, almost nothing is changing. We still have that same side-mounted fingerprint scanner, the volume rocker there, speaker up top. The screen is virtually identical on the inside. It's virtually identical on the outside, like we talked about. 0.2 millimeters of difference from the perspective that we are currently looking at is going to be effectively impossible to see in a render. It's only when these devices are actually in your hands side by side that you're going to be able to discern much of a difference. In this orientation, you might be able to see more of a difference, but they don't actually show the render from the angle that would give you that difference, where you can see that it is indeed folding totally flat. So even from this angle here, this looks pretty much indistinguishable from the Z Fold 4. One tiny difference here is that the LED flash is going from the bottom of the camera bump to up here next to the top camera. That might be one of the bigger visual changes. Now, bear in mind that the screen sizes are apparently staying exactly the same. So that means that the bezels themselves are probably where some of that reduction in size, that 0.2 millimeters, are coming from. So maybe expect slightly smaller bezels than before, because like I said, the screen sizes are staying, from what we can tell, exactly the same. The cameras, I don't expect to see any massive changes there either. I also wouldn't expect to see any massive changes to the cameras. It's possible that we'll see something like they did with the Z Fold 4, where they basically got a slightly larger sensor that kind of made low light a little bit better, but did not make a huge difference to the overall camera performance. I think that we're probably pretty much locked in with the camera setup that we currently have, as it's really not that old. We just got it in the Z Fold 4. There were rumors of going to a 108 megapixel sensor in the Z Fold 5, but I don't think that is going to be happening. I think we're going to be staying with the 50 megapixel primary. What is it, like a 12 or something ultra wide and a 10.8 or a 10 something 3x telephoto. I think that that's pretty much where we're going to be staying with the Z Fold 5. This really can't be described as anything other than an iterative release. Nothing huge coming here, although I do think that new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is going to improve the longevity, the battery life, and the performance by a much larger margin than we are expecting. Yes, this thing does visually look effectively identical to what we have with the Z Fold 4. But I think once it's in people's hands, the fact that it folds totally flat, the fact that that crease is going to be harder to see, and the fact that we're getting a big bump with that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, it is an iterative release, don't get me wrong, but I do think it's going to be a good iterative release. Guys, if you want to look at these images, I'm going to drop a link in the description down below to smartpre.com. Big shout out to OnLeaks for the work they continue to do in the tech world. I will see you on the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friend.